for joining us again on this Thursday edition of Newsmax Now.
Glad everybody could stick around for another hour. The GOP presidential field got a little bit more crowded last night and this morning. Former Governor George Pataki, the latest entry into the race, and former Senator Rick Santorum announcing his run last night. Well, one thing we can tell you for sure, the Republican side of the presidential race, there is no front runner right now. A new Quinnipiac poll shows five candidates all tied for the lead. Jeb Bush, Ben Carson, Mike Huckabee, Marco Rubio, and Scott Walker. The same poll also says just two candidates on the Republican side, Marco Rubio and Rand Paul, even come close to Hillary Clinton right now. They are within about 4 points of the former First Lady. The election just 529 days away.
Congressman Paul Ryan is supporting fast-track authority for the president on trade deals. The Wisconsin Republican says the move would hold the president accountable. In an op-ed, Ryan writes that Congress needs to show the world that even though the president doesn't always follow through, it can still rely on America. And given the state of affairs, establishing TPA would be a real sign of seriousness.
The Pentagon confirms that live anthrax was inadvertently sent to labs in 9 states and a U.S. airbase in South Korea. Those shipments were all from a military base in Utah, where the anthrax was supposed to be irradiated and left inactive so labs could do research, but that was not the case. Officials say there's no threat, though, to the general public. More than 24 people right now are being treated as a precaution. Iran's foreign minister says a nuclear deal could happen as soon as June 30th, as long as the U.S. doesn't try to change the agreement.
If people insist on excessive demands, on renegotiations, then it would be difficult to envisage an agreement even without a deadline.
The U.S. and Iran continue to try and hammer out a finalized deal to reach that deadline, which happens at the end of next month.
Illegal immigrants crossing the border is at a 20-year low. According to the Pew Research Center, the population of illegal immigrants in the U.S. tripled between 1990 and 2007 to over 12 million. That number has since dropped by about 1 million. DHS Secretary Jay Johnson says the massive investment in border security has contributed to the decline. Tech giant Yahoo may soon face a huge class action lawsuit over privacy concerns. The company is accused of reading subscriber emails to boost advertising revenue. Now, last year, nearly 80% of its profits came from search and display ads. This comes after a California judge ruled that email users who sent or received messages from 2011 could sue as a group. Officials estimate that the group could include more than 1 million people. Nebraska lawmakers have abolished the death penalty. The move overrode a veto from Governor Pete Ricketts. The governor responded to the override, saying he's appalled that Nebraska has lost a, quote, critical tool to protect law enforcement and Nebraska families. The narrow vote makes Nebraska the first state in 2 years to get rid of capital punishment.
Large parts of storm-battered Texas are now watching for flash floods again this afternoon. Severe weather in that area has left at least 16 people dead. Rescue crews in central Texas are still looking for 11 people. Officials say many homes and buildings have been destroyed.
We've lost several homes here. I know Wimberley has multiple homes with they're down to the foundation. It's a pretty devastating scenario.
More than 700 homes in all have been damaged or destroyed by this series of storms.
In California, cleanup continues after a massive oil spill.
All oil spills are serious, and so when we see anything on the water and it's a petroleum-based product, we move with everything we've got. And that's the way we treat every single one of them. So it doesn't matter if the report's just a couple gallons or a larger amount.
Cleanup crews are on the scene.
And FIFA's embattled president Sepp Blatter struggling to hang on to power amid that huge corruption scandal inside his organization. He arrived in Switzerland for more meetings today. Blatter plans to stand his ground against his competition for FIFA's presidency. A guy named Prince Ali is currently now could be the guy to step into his place. Many countries are backing Ali for the leadership role. Blatter was asked to resign from the job, but he refused. According to FIFA sources, yesterday morning, Swiss police arrested 7 top FIFA officials. 14 others were also arrested here in the U.S.
The Justice Department charges 15 Chinese nationals with fraud for their involvement in an SAT scam. The DOJ says the 15 Chinese people used fake passports to pose as high school students to take college aptitude exams like the SAT. A federal grand jury says the imposters used counterfeit passports to fake test proctors into believing that they were the actual student that was exposed to taking the exam. And it's Senator Elizabeth Warren, a populist favorite among Democrats, may be more of a capitalist than she lets others believe. The Massachusetts Democrat and her husband made close to $250,000 flipping foreclosed homes. The National Review reports that the couple made the money between 1993 and 1998 before she built a political career standing up for us everyday Americans. In case you were wondering where that chuckle was coming from.
Well, first, Elizabeth
J.D.
Warren,
Hayworth, everyone.
First, she tried to claim that she was Native American because of high cheekbones to get a special Harvard Law faculty position. Now we're finding out that she and her husband were flipping foreclosed homes, but that's okay. She's a leftist. She always cares.
Everybody was doing it back then.
Everybody was
Everybody.
Kidding. Let's talk about the other side of the presidential field. Getting bigger, expanding. Rick Santorum launching his 2016 presidential bid. He had this to say about his competitor, Senator Rand Paul's claim that ISIS has come into being because of hawks in the GOP.
I would expect to hear that from maybe Bernie Sanders. I don't expect to hear that from someone running for the Republican nomination. I think that is just fundamentally a misunderstanding of the nature of the enemy we face.
Rand Paul going too far with his
Well, we
statement?
predicted this yesterday.
Yeah.
We sat out here and talked about the fact that it departs so far from GOP orthodoxy. Even if you're disappointed in the Iraqis, to somehow claim that Republicans had anything to do with creating ISIS, it ain't going to play. And what was really, not to get too inside baseball, but to whom did Rick Santorum grant that interview?
George Stephanopoulos.
Yes,
of all
George
people.
Stephanopoulos. Now, in terms of early campaign exposure under what would typically be a hostile situation, he actually threw a bone to Stephanopoulos, guaranteeing prominence last night on ABC and again this morning on Good Morning America. So in terms of making a splash with an announcement, Santorum, by allowing Stephanopoulos a little bit back on the rehab trail, that was a pretty smart move.
I think it was very savvy. And, you look at the 2012 Rick Santorum campaign, he should not be discounted as a candidate. He won the Iowa caucuses. He almost won Romney's sort of home state, Michigan, in the primary there, which would have thrown things in complete disarray.
Well, he's used to that, right? Being underestimated.
Well, yeah, he was never favored to win any race in which he was involved, starting with the House of Representatives to the U.S. Senate seat he took away from, I believe it was Harris Wofford of Pennsylvania.
Wow.
The reason I can remember, it's 1994. I know you kids were still in school, but hey, that was the year I was elected to the House. Ricky's a good guy. And the challenge for former Senator Santorum is the fact that so many folks kind of fill the bill of social conservatism. Mike Huckabee is back in it, and Ben Carson is in it. And so you've got that going, and just wonder if Santorum can repeat what he was able to do in 2012. I think it's going to be an uphill battle.
What about Pataki?
George obviously has the good sense to come be with us on Newsmax TV quite a bit. Talk about a guy who's been underestimated. I mean, in '94, you saw a situation where Governor Cuomo was so much the odds-on favorite, but the national wave caught Pataki, got elected, had two very successful terms.
But a lot of people think he doesn't have a chance.
Well, it's going to be tough. He's playing New Hampshire, and it was good to see him in a blue suit because he almost becomes the man in the gray flannel suit. He's a steady guy. He's a dependable guy. But I think even George would admit maybe he's not a flashy, charismatic kind of guy. So that could be a challenge for him, but he's a great guy, and we'll see what happens.
What do you have coming up tonight on Newsmax Prime?
Oh, we've got plenty tonight. General Michael Hayden, former director of the CIA and the NSA, will join us. Another former CIA official said, hey, ISIS could win this thing. We're going to get General Hayden's reaction to that and also talk about what he suggests Congress might do with the Patriot Act. That and more, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here.
Still more to come on Newsmax Now.